Hello, welcome to Friday I'm in Bed.
Podcast for midlife women living their best life, but in bed by 10.
Right, so we start with our weekly chance to moan about pointless and irrelevant things. So, Kate, what's been annoying you this week for the moaning?
I don't know how to title this, so I might just launch in. So it's when I need to speak to somebody on behalf of a member of my family and people won't speak to me because I'm not the account holder, which I know before anyone comes at me is to do with GDPR and privacy laws. However, let me give you a couple of examples. My daughter bought a train ticket on Trainline. She put her email as .co.uk and it's actually .com, so she couldn't get the ticket, so she couldn't get out of the train. So the man at the gate wouldn't let her out. She was stuck, 15 years old, which I know is not child, but she rings me. I ring Trainline and they basically wouldn't speak to me because I didn't buy the ticket. And I'm like, it's my daughter. She's 15. She's stuck. No, we won't speak to you. And I was like, so if I ring back and pretend to be her, will you speak to me? And they were like, couldn't answer that. And I said, or if I ring back and say, I booked the ticket, you'd speak to me. And they were like, so of course I put the phone down and I rang back up and I was put on hold, didn't bother, went via Twitter and they went, did she buy the ticket? And I went, no, I bought the ticket. And then of course they'd help me. And this is like ridiculous. And this happened yesterday. We want to cancel our car insurance. My husband's the main driver. I'm a name driver. My son's a name driver. I pay for it. I book it. It's in my email, but they wouldn't speak to me. They said he needs to email us. And I'm like, well, it's my email address. So I can just get off the phone and email you as him. And they were like, and then they went, he needs to download the app. And I said, so I can go and download the app and pretend to be him. And they, so of course I put the phone down, downloaded the app and did it as him. And it's like, I get it's GDPR, but sometimes I just feel like the world is against us and I can't get anything freaking done.
Okay, I'm gonna cancel this one even though I agree with you. And these are my reasons.
Okay.
So, because it gets on my nerves too. However, I do think that GDPR is a necessary thing to have. Do you know what I mean? And it could be used as a form of like coercion and control. And it's, so I do think it's important to have in place. So, but also it gets on my nerves as well. But honestly, the answer to that is to do exactly what I do, which is to do all of it online or by email. And they've got no idea who they're talking to. Or just not to tell them. For instance, you can be Kitty on the phone. Like, my mum used to call my bank for me when I was, younger. And she just used to go, like, I can't work my bank account because my daughter doesn't like the phone, so I have to ring for her.
I know. I think the learning is, as you said, you have to do everything online. But I'm getting so frustrated because I want to speak to people because I needed to get to the bottom of the train one fast because she was stuck and she wasn't being allowed out.
As long as you give the answers that they want, they're absolutely fine. And I don't necessarily think that that's right either.
No,
but that's the way around it. So I feel like if I let this one, I agree with this one, it would be a bad GDPR thing, which I do much as a pain as it is sometimes. I do see the reason for its existence with the privacy stuff we were talking about last week.
Of course.
Despite the fact that I agree, I can't allow it. I know that's stupid.
I think particularly because you talk to, it comes back to the chat bots. Because if you go online, you speak to a chat bot. You don't speak to a person, which is another reason why I was picking the phone up. But
and then when you do speak to a person, you can be absolutely anyone in the chat as long as you answer the questions the right way when they say, so if you know all someone's details, like, what's your date of birth? Yeah, fine. I know their date of birth. Like, I set this up in the first place. I know what all the answers are, so it's absolutely fine. Just because you had to do it in someone else's name, like car insurance, for example, because I don't drive and my husband drives. So, yeah, just lie. Yeah, I feel like I'm not condoning lying in public, but I definitely am.
Oh, you either lie
or specific scenarios.
Anyway, drove me mad and I went mental. And eventually they rectified the issue and she got off the train.
Good.
After me lying. What about you?
So mine's a lot smaller than this. It's a lot less relating to, countrywide laws. It's just people who don't push the button at pedestrian crossings when they're waiting to cross the road.
Good.
Yeah, they walk up and they just stand there like they're just waiting for the traffic to stop. But then when people are waiting there, I'll quite often, you'll walk over and you'll just join them. And depending on what kind of, traffic light signal setup it is, you'll be stood there for a while and then you'll look over and the light's not lit. And you'll be like, oh, I'll press the button then. And then it will change and let you cross the road. We've all been stood there for ages. There's people who are like, I think they're too cool to be beholden to traffic lights. And they're like, but then why go to a crossing? You can wander out into the middle of the road anywhere if you want to get run over. Yeah. So why do it? Like, just press the button. It's helpful for everybody. And I know that over the pandemic, there was a good 2 years where I never pressed a pedestrian crossing button because I didn't need to. But when you need to, and there's lots of people around and we're not in the middle of a pandemic, just press it. It's fine. It'll save you time. I know you're cool, but it'll save you time.
I'm going to allow this. This is not, this is getting allowed, but I'm allowing it because it's like it's just so basic that I'm shocked that people don't, because
exactly. And I know I'm probably only losing seconds of my life, but they add up.
Are they young people or old people, or is there a link between the type of person that is too nonchalant to press the button?
I don't know. I think both. I think some people just seem to be too lazy. They like turn up at the crossing and it's a bit further over and they're just like too lazy to push it. They just assume that they'll get across the road at some point. But it's just like everybody else is then just turning up assuming that we're all waiting for the lights to change. And depending on what type of crossing it is, they're not going to change or we'll be stood there for ages. So, yeah.
Oh, well, I'm allowing that in because that's just ridiculous. It's like somebody
it is ridiculous, isn't it? And it's a proper stupid little moaning, but it's been getting on my nerves recently because there's a crossing near my gym that takes ages to get across and is quite busy. And you'll get 5, 6 people all waiting to cross the road. And then you'll suddenly realise not a single one of them has pressed the button because the first person to arrive there didn't press the button and we're all just stood there like idiots waiting.
That. Good. Well,
has no one pressed the button? I best press it then.
I'll press the button.
Passive aggressive.
Yeah. This week on Friday I'm in Bed, we're starting with Jeremy Clarkson's comments suggesting benefit claimants should send thank you emails to taxpayers. The remarks have sparked a huge debate, especially around disability benefits. And we're asking a much bigger question. What are these benefits actually for? Are they simply there to stop people starving? Or should they enable people to live with dignity, stay connected to their communities and contribute in whatever way they can? We're also talking about gratitude, who society expects to be thankful, and whether supporting disabled people should be seen as an act of charity or simply part of living in a fair society.
Then we're talking about something affecting thousands of women in their 50s and 60s. How do you get a job when your experience is the very thing that gives away your age? We're chatting about AI filtering CVs, ageism in recruitment, and why so many women returning to work after years of parenting or caring responsibilities are finding doors closed before they've even had an interview. At the same time, the retirement age keeps creeping up, so we're asking, how are women expected to work into their late 60s if they can't even get hired at 52? Is experience really an asset anymore, or has it quietly become a liability? Grab a cuppa and let's get into it. Hi, Kate. What have you been up to this week?
Well, I was thinking about it before we came live here. Not a lot, really. Just a really chilled week. I've done lots of walking. I went out for dinner with some friends. Did some tidying. I did some sewing. Sound very trad wifey. I hosted the pub quiz that went really well. I just had a really chilled week. And do you know why I think it is? I upped my HRT when I came back from holiday. So how many weeks have I been back? Maybe 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
So I think it's all beginning to kick in and I'm feeling less tired. I'm still getting up with my husband in the morning, which we talked about last week. I'm still being a good wife and getting up. Lol. But also, but I'm not tired. I'm less tired. So I think I'm just feeling a little bit sort of chilled.
Nice.
That I'm sure will change in an instant.
It's been kind of all go here. When my mum and dad came to visit at the weekend and we sent them out in our camper van, so that was quite nice. So they were kind of a test people. So we were like, how do you find it? And they were like, it's amazing. They slept really well apparently, so that's all good. Slept well enough that they want to know what the mattress is that we've got in the van, which is just we got an IKEA one and cut it into the right sizes and then got it covered.
Right. Clever.
Yeah, so that was nice. It was a little campsite that's behind a pub, so we went out for dinner at the pub. It does massive portions, massive. Yeah, that was nice. Weather was lovely. They've got Pomeranians, so they came and ran around like little lunatics and stuff, so it was lovely. And then it's all a bit go this week because we applied to foster for a pug rescue charity. and we're going to pick up our first pair of little elderly foster pugs. So
I can't believe it's moved so fast. Last week,
I know.
we're thinking of doing it and we're getting ready and we've got an interview, and now a week later we're recording it and you're going to pick 2 up.
Yeah. We didn't expect it to be so fast either. It's it's not the best timing because I'm going away for a couple of days this weekend. I'm going to see Beetlejuice with my friend. But my husband will look after him over the weekend. And little poor him's going to have to be cuddled by 3 elderly pugs. Just looking at mine wandering around in the background there. So,
I think that's great. Do you know how long you'll have them for?
No, it's I can't really go into like all the details and stuff. But
is it long term, short term, or do you not get told that?
It's potentially long term, but hopefully short term is the idea.
Of course.
Yeah,
well, congratulations.
That'll be super cute at least.
I yesterday in a magazine across 3 pages.
I saw that.
My face and my outfits, which is quite funny and cool. I've made my daughter film me as I went into the shop to look, and she was like, and then I'd look at it and like, can you redo it, please? Because you've made me look like an absolute monster. Like, what is going on? Although it is like, I'm on the front cover, which is really exciting, alongside Sarah Ferguson and Andrew, formerly known as Prince Andrew. And I'm like, oh, I could have been next to some like if I wanted to frame it or something, which I don't really.
How do I cut them out of this so that I'll frame it and we don't really want the Andrew Mountbatten in it or whatever his name is now.
It's a bit like, but anyway, it's still a talking point. That in itself.
Yeah. Well, look at you, fancy.
Yes, it called me a style queen, so that's now my official name.
I saw that, style queen on £10 a week.
Yeah, I do. Yes.
Right, okay, let's do this. Okay, so we're going to start this week by talking about Jeremy Clarkson. So I don't want to talk about Jeremy Clarkson at all. I want to talk about his column in the Times this week, which was, it was classic Jeremy Clarkson. He does what he does. It's a really exaggerated satirical style. I get that. He rage baits deliberately, obviously. We all know that. But the underlying thing of it was a criticism of welfare spending and what he sees as a lack of reciprocity between taxpayers and claimants. So the starting point of his whole article was that there are more than 1 million young people who are not working or not looking for work, which was his framing. And he focused particularly on people claiming benefits for conditions like ADHD, depression and neurodivergent conditions. He suggested that this was the headline that everyone picked up on, was him suggesting that people should be more grateful, basically, and that benefits recipients should be made to write an email to a random taxpayer every week saying thank you. Yes, saying thank you. Was it every week? Just checking. Yeah, weekly. Yeah. See? Yeah, weekly emails to taxpayers to say thank you. This was his exact line. It's so kind of you to go to work every day so that I don't have to, is what should be in the letters. That maybe, he suggested, that it would put people off claiming benefits for neurodivergence and ADHD if they had to write that letter, thus suggesting that it's not the disability that people suggest it is. So I have, as you can imagine, many issues with this. But so there are several things to deal with here. The first one is his suggestion that basically people on benefits aren't working, because that's just flat out not true to start with. Yeah. The benefit, the particular figure he mentioned was £194. That is the highest rate of PIP that you can receive, so personal independence payment. And it's the highest pay, and only about a third of people, a little more than that, actually get that highest rate. It includes all the mobility, all the daily living, everything. And like I say, most people don't get it, and it's not a means-tested benefit. Very high percentage of people claiming these benefits are working. They are contributing to society. However, they have additional costs which are caused by their conditions, which they have to meet, and the PIP is designed to help with those additional costs and to help keep people independent and contributing to society and working. Universal credit is another one. It's not one that's claimed by people who aren't working all the time. It's claimed by people who may be in work but aren't being paid enough to actually meet their living costs, especially if they've children to bring up and that kind of thing, which, then there's a whole other issue there of why aren't people who are in full-time work earning enough money to actually pay their bills, and that's just unsustainable. There's multiple benefits that he's just lumped into one big benefit scroungers, people don't want to work. That's kind of like the first issue.
Yeah.
The other issue is the idea that people should be somehow grateful, of course, for this. And should people be grateful? So are we in a world where people should be that grateful that that support net is there? Or is that the kind of thing that a properly functioning society should just offer without expecting people to be grateful? I feel like that's that's a more complicated question than it sounds. I know how easy it is to go from full-time work to suddenly not being able to support yourself, to being hospitalized, not being able to work full-time, not being able to work at all, having your career that you'd built up completely taken away from you. So, and I think that one of the things that these arguments do often miss is just how close we can all be to becoming a benefits scrounger at any time. What I would like to talk about, I think, is the benefit system and what it should be for, what it is for, and whether people should be grateful for it. They have done a, what's it called? A first proper review of PIP. They started it in 2013, PIP, and its own review found that the benefit is not fit for purpose. Over 90% of 38,000 people who responded said that their assessment experience was negative. The words in the report were dehumanizing and degrading. So the review has finished and the full recommendations are going to land this autumn. So basically, the results are in and they've said it's not fit for purpose. We need to do something to fix it. And then this column has kind of jumped into the middle of it with yes, the benefit scroungers should all be really grateful. So it's kind of a bit of a moment for that to pop up in public opinion as well, which bothers me.
Wow, that's what I'd like to talk about.
Yes. So let's start with the gratitude. Do you think?
I would know. Can I just you
obviously have something you want to start with there. So let's go.
Well, I think there's two things. Well, there's actually three things. Gratitude being one. I think it's the first thing is the kind of very right wing rhetoric in particular that benefits our scroungers, which is I need to say for anyone listening, every time Gemma said benefit scroungers, she did air quotation marks. But if you're not watching this, you won't know that. So she's saying benefit scroungers.
You make a good point.
As in, particularly on people on the right, quote figures and data and therefore viewpoints about benefits. It always looks worse than you think because the pension pot comes out of that. So I don't have the data, but I do know, and I see it all the time when people say X amount of people or X amount of money is spent. Is the benefit, is that figure being quoted, does that include pensions or not? And I urge people, if they're listening to this going, well, actually, we pay out too much money. I urge you, whenever you see something, to ask yourself, is the pension pot in there? Because we have an aging population and we have more people on pensions than are being born, probably because of people aren't being born. So therefore that skews things. And I think it's really easy then for the right to use this argument. It's linked to being full up, isn't it? And immigration. It's linked to all of that stuff. We don't have enough money because we're paying for all these, in inverted commas, scroungers. But as you said, it also includes universal credit, which we know that nurses, for example, are, people in jobs like that are claiming because it's low pay. Yeah, there's all that so there's that kind of political. The other thing that sprung to my mind when you were talking, and I know we're going to pick up on it in the last section, in the second section, is ageism, because I'm getting quite fed up of people of my generation and older moaning about young people not working, scrounging, that kind of thing, when it's just reverse ageism, isn't it? It's like they don't, I've done this and you're bad, and it's no different from them going, you're old, shut up. Like, it's no different. So I think there's that kind of bit around young people not working and And then there's gratitude, as you said, you said really interestingly, you can be grateful without making a song and dance of it. You don't have to write a letter. You don't have to thank a card, send a thank you card. You don't have to, you can just be grateful. But is that enough? So there's that. So I think there's three things there, but we're happy to start with gratitude because how do you express your gratitude? Do you express your gratitude, or do you just, are you like?
Well, I see. This is one of the things that does interest with me because I don't personally know every single person in the UK that claims benefits, obviously.
Yeah.
And I do know that it includes the state pension. So I can only like kind of speak from my own personal experience, is that when I had to go into hospital for a stem cell transplant, I couldn't earn money. Benefits are the thing that let us keep our house, that, you know, let us keep eating, let us keep feeding our dogs. And yeah, I was massively grateful for that. But that doesn't mean I felt like I should be writing a letter, because I felt like it should be there. I'm grateful for it, but I also feel like it's the right thing to do. If you live in a society, you should be protecting the most vulnerable people in your society. And it's so easy to just kind of like tip over into needing that support. When you were fine before, you literally don't know at what point. If you're talking disability benefits as well, particularly, anyone can become disabled at any time, and it's not something that you actually have control over, like regardless of whether you think you do or not. So I think one of the other things that quite often comes up around that is whether benefits should be paying for people to live or just to survive. So that comes up a lot. One of the things Clarkson mentioned in the column was that, so I can buy a bigger telly next week. There is a weird obsession with big tellies, I think.
Yeah.
You quite often get, and they've got a flat screen TV. You go, well, they're all flat screen.
I know. And it's like, it's, they've got iPhones, all of them. Well, like you can't get you can get a brick phone, but like you can't, we've already discussed in the moan-ins before, you can't pay for your parking and you can't do anything without a smartphone anymore.
So I think that some of that kind of ties into it all, that idea that one of the questions I quite often like to ask people is, would you swap? Right? Because that's when you expect people to be grateful, right? But what are they being grateful for? Money? Like, we all know money isn't everything, but you need it to survive. So I think, and sometimes it's like privileges as well, people, disabled people getting on an airplane first, or skipping queues and stuff, which I do because I can't stand still for a long time to queue. So I have an access card, which means that I can skip queues some places. But the question I think you should ask yourself every time you think is, would you swap? So would you swap the life you have for £194 a week and being in a wheelchair, and having incurable cancer, and having a chronic illness and ADHD and these things that like affect your life? Because I think that's when you're talking gratitude, that's one of the big things is you're expecting people to be grateful for money, but maybe they're not grateful for the fact that their life isn't how they expected it to be. Maybe they would rather have your life and not have £194. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
We're treating that financial incentive as like it's a reward, but it isn't. It's assistance to keep people independent, which then goes on. One of the other issues, which I think is one of the things that they found that the system itself is not fit for purpose, is that it essentially rewards deterioration. Because for example, one of the things I do to keep myself mobile and to mean that I can still function is I go to the gym. I go to Pilates. I kind of, when my back first fractured, I couldn't get my knees to my chest, for example. But with a lot of work over the last few years, I can. Not that that's, a vital skill in life, being able to get your knees to your chest. But it's just an example of progression, which means that I can, with prior preparation, now pick things up off the floor, which I couldn't do before. However, that could be seen as a reason not to give someone benefits, because they can do something, but they might only be able to do that thing by taking an action that having the benefits has enabled them.
It's a bit like there was that news story that, as in it kicked off in the news rather than it being a news story. It was a woman who went on holiday and she was on some kind of disability and benefit. I don't know. I just remember the furore rather than the story, because actually woman who has a disability that is on benefits goes on holiday is not a news story, because she's allowed to go on holiday. And actually, how do we know how she got the money? And she might have saved for 10 years and she might have spent, whatever, like it's just not relevant. But the furore, and I think it was the underlying message from the furore was, how dare she? It's, like, how dare she go on holiday? And it was kind of like, well, because she can. Like we are. So there must be this feeling with people that if you're having a benefit I expect you to be literally bedbound or
Thank you,
not
sir.
be able, not be able to leave the house or
Yeah,
ever go to the
exactly.
pub or ever do
There's like a
anything that's
very
vaguely fun.
Victorian kind of
Charles
workhouse
Dickens.
image of it, isn't there? That you should be destitute and reduced to nothing, and this money should be helping you just scrounge and buy a crust of bread, please.
I know.
Rather than
Have a
helping
life
you
that's happy.
contribute to society and live at. See, personally, I would be all for a universal basic income. I think that's a fantastic idea. I'm not going to do the maths and work it out. I have no idea how that would work. I just say, some people. I'm not an economist, just in case you hadn't realized. But I think that would be a fantastic idea. Give everyone a minimum level, and then you can earn more, you can earn less, you can do, and maybe people would have more times to contribute to society with things that don't necessarily earn money, like volunteering and that kind of thing, which I think is fantastic.
And then another thing then that's come up in this is he was specifically talking about or referencing young people and neurodiversity. And obviously there's been quite a few articles recently about how ADHD is overdiagnosed and is it even real? I was out and some man said to me it's not real. It's just used as a way, obviously the big pharma to get their money for the medication, that whole kind of conspiracy theory as well. And so not only was he disrespectful around people that get benefits, of which there are all types of people, kind of people, ages of people, but it was very young people with ADHD kind of thing. So it's like dismissing that. And also this, I can't remember, you said at the beginning, young people don't want to work or so therefore are scrounging, that kind of concept. When I look around me and every time I log on to Facebook, like the local page, it's full of people saying, has anyone got any work? Are there any jobs? I have 2 teenagers who are actively looking for work. And we're going to talk about this in the next section more, but we're talking about older people. But there are no jobs. There are no part-time jobs. There are no, that people are sending off hundreds and hundreds of CVs or, applying to hundreds of jobs, young people, and they're not getting anything. So it's like they do want to work. Of course, there's going to be a couple, there's going to be some that don't want to work. Of course, there, always will be. But it's such a generalization that young people don't want to work and would rather just scrounge benefits because they do want to work. And they're worried and they're scared about their future because if they can't get a job at 18, what's going to happen? They had all these dreams of doing stuff and, so that really frustrates me. And it's so, as I said before, it's ageist, but it's also just out of, what's the word?
Touch.
Out of touch, really out of touch. And funnily enough, before we came on air, I opened up Facebook and there was an article on the Telegraph about how Adam Peaty is the figurehead of an ungrateful generation. And obviously that's not about benefits. He's got money. And we know we've talked about Beckham, the Beckham boy, Brooklyn Beckham being ungrateful, so there's a theme of young people being ungrateful. And I wonder actually, and this is one for the generation above us, has there always been a case that older people think young people are ungrateful? Because I know even I with my kids, when they don't eat their dinner, I even found myself once going, there's some people that don't even have food, as I scraped it into the bin. And you think, oh my God, I sound like my mum. But then does that sound like her mum? This kind of, is it just a rhetoric?
I think we probably have a bit of a visibility now thing, what with, Facebook and Instagram and everything, is that normal people living their lives are more visible. So I do think that kind of thing that, they're ungrateful, look at them all enjoying their holidays or Netflix, we used to go to the cinema. Do you know how much it costs to go to the cinema? All that kind of thing.
I know.
And so I think there's like a bit visibility issue, but I do think that there is a tendency to think young people are terribly ungrateful for all the things that they've got. I do think that's an ongoing issue over years, like not new at all.
But do you ever, I'm going to give an example. So my mum would send a thank you card if she went round to your house for dinner. She'd send a card. I don't know if she still would, but she absolutely would. And I was brought up that you send a card. I don't do that, but I know there's people that think you should do that. So it's that kind of so this is away from benefits now. Do you have you sent thank you cards? Do you send thank
No, no, I do not. And we didn't. In fact, it took about 10 years after we got married and I finally threw away the thank you cards that we'd bought and not got around to sending. But I know. I sent everyone a picture of them and said, look, these are the cards we haven't got around to writing. Just like, should be grateful you got an invite. We gave you dinner. No, it didn't say that at all. That's ridiculous.
I wonder if it's a dying art. Do you know what I mean? So when my mum's generation...
But the thing is what you do. It's only if you've been around someone's house for dinner, you send them a WhatsApp or a text message afterwards, don't you? And you say, it was really lovely to see you this evening. Thanks for dinner. We must do it again.
I think sometimes, I'm going to be really honest, I need to be more conscious with that. So, for example, my kids, if they get when they get presents for their birthday, they obviously thank the person that's given them the present. But then I remember afterwards to say, can you send them a text to say, the next day? And they were like, I've already thanked them. And I'm like, no, just thank them, particularly if they've got money or something. And I think I picked up my daughter and her mates the other day late at night. I took them to Thorpe Park. That's what I did. I took them to Thorpe Park and brought them home. And most of the mums sent me a text thanking me. And I was like, oh, that means a lot to me. Although, interestingly, I noticed the ones that didn't. And then that makes me think, do we expect it? And also, I don't always send messages. So the Saturday night, a friend of mine picked up my daughter from a party and I thought, right, I need to send a message to thank. So it's kind of like you have to sometimes consciously do it, but then do you look ungrateful for not doing it? So it's a whole, expectation thing going on.
I think maybe like modern etiquette is not quite as easy to decipher as Bridgerton era etiquette, is it? So it's difficult. I think gratitude's a funny one. And like, again, back to the benefits, it's like, what are you expecting people to be grateful for? I had a lovely evening. I came around to your house for dinner. Then I would send a message that said, really lovely to see you. Dinner was lovely, that kind of thing. And if someone's gone out of their way for you, so for example, they're giving you a lift or something like that, then you say, thanks so much for the lift. I really appreciate it. That's wonderful. But if they're just doing something that they're supposed to do, like, and now I can't think of an example of things that are actually like supposed to do. Like, for example, you quite often get the thing where women are expected to do all the housework, right? Yeah. So if you come home and your husband's cleaned the toilet, are you expected to be grateful that he's cleaned the toilet if you normally do it? So maybe that's the kind of example. If it's something that should be happening, you have to show gratitude.
But I think there's also, if I get invited around to your house for dinner, I'm still waiting, by the way. I feel in a way, and people might come at me if I stand at the door and say, Gemma, thank you so much. I had a really lovely evening. Let's do it again. I really, do I have to follow up? And some people would always follow up. And some people it's like, well, it's a bit like my daughter going, well, I've already thanked her. I thanked her in person. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, but I feel like it needs another thank you. So I think it's a really funny thing. But as you said, if you're just doing something, that should be done. That's the common piece.
So then that's how are you looking at the benefit system? Are you looking at this as a provision that a responsible society should offer to its most vulnerable members? Or are you looking at it as some kind of gift that's given to people that are ungrateful and now don't deserve it because they were ungrateful? And I think that's the wrong.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It needs to be the former, particularly because, as you said, you don't know what's going to happen to you tomorrow,
Exactly.
And whether that is around having an accident or being ill, but it could be you lose your job, you get made redundant, you can't, for whatever reason, stuff happens, and we need to look after people.
One of the things that people don't realise about, just getting old. That's what the pension's for, isn't it? Getting old. And that keeps going up. Every couple of years, I realise I'm never going to get to retire. That's over. Because they keep moving the goalposts further and further away.
We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yes. But I think that one of the things people don't realise about kind of all benefits, universal credit, PIP, whatever, is that some of them are means tested, some of them aren't means tested. But most of them don't mean you're out of work necessarily. Yes. Or And very importantly, that you are not contributing to society. Some people have dynamic disabilities. That means some days they can do lots of things. They can go on holiday. They can have a wonderful time. And some days they can't do wonderful things and they're at home, they're in bed all day. I know people who had to leave their career because of a cancer diagnosis, a chronic cancer diagnosis, and then became a foster carer. So as a foster carer, is that not contributing to society as a foster carer, looking after children? You know, there's advocates, volunteers, people who care for other people who are ill, who may not then be able to work because they're caring for them, essentially as unpaid carers. And then for the carers allowance is a thing that allows them to do that. And it will be nowhere near what you would have earned doing a job. But you can contribute to society in ways that don't involve earning money just for you.
Yeah, I think that's the key bit. It's the just for you. It's very me. It's all for me, and I'm not going to help anybody or anything else. And actually, we have taxes so that allegedly there'll be no potholes. So there's street lights working, and so there's a fire and ambulance, and there's an NHS, and also that people that can't work right now or maybe ever can actually have a life. So it's kind of stop being so selfish, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it feeds into that kind of suspicion and fear. And that's what articles like this are doing, feeding
and that's
into
what they want.
that.
Yeah, maybe. And I was about to say, and I forgot to say, that farm hands, people that work on farms, pickers and stuff, are often the lowest paid and also need those things.
Quite often claim it's seasonally, especially, seasonal work and stuff like that.
So if you can cut that and put it back in, that'd be great.
I'll just leave all this at the ending.
Okay.
We're still talking.
The next topic is perfectly super relevant to roll off from the first topic, because it's about women in their 50s and 60s not being able to get work. It's not something that's new news to me, because obviously I work with women in their 50s and I am a woman in her 50s and has experienced this. So what's happened is the ex-editor of Elle magazine, who is Stacey Jugid, I think is how to pronounce her name, has had this amazing career, but openly has shared that she is now struggling to get work. I'm presuming she's been out of work for a bit, probably due to caring roles, which is what so many women have. And she's discovering that she cannot get work. She's applied for hundreds and hundreds of jobs and not received anything back. So been totally ghosted. And she's been sharing this and discovering that there's thousands of women out there experiencing exactly the same thing. She's being vocal, which is fabulous because it is a thing. And one of the things she has said is she shared her CV with a friend who is, I think, in recruitment, or, is an expert in CVs, and said, you need to almost Botox your CV. In other words, by sharing all of your amazing experience working at the biggest magazines in the world, working with the biggest fashion brands in the world, by sharing all that, what you are showing is your age. And she's outraged by this, rightfully so, because actually her experience is what makes her, but also what makes her an absolute fabulous candidate. I'm also seeing lots of articles, probably off the back of this, of women talking about their amazing careers in something less glamorous, as being the editor for Elle, and saying, I can't even get a job on the shop floor in Lidl, like a couple of hours a week. Like, I can't get anything yet. I have this amazing career. And there are lots of reasons being cited as why this is happening. The biggest issue is not ageism, I don't think. It's actually the use of AI. And this is something which leads me on to talking about young people as well. This is across the board. AI is now filtering CVs. So because most people use companies like Indeed, so they're using websites rather than a sign in the door saying, we need help, Sunday person needed. Everything's done through apps and online filters out candidates, which means that human beings aren't actively looking at CVs anymore. They're being filtered, which is really concerning, because people are having to work out how to beat the AI robot to be seen, which is very, very disappointing in itself. People are being ghosted. So people are applying endlessly for jobs and they're not getting any reply at all. I would argue that it's actually quite easy to do that. I used to work in recruitment and we always replied to people. So and people are having interviews and not even getting a response of whether they've got the job or not. And I've got personal experience of that. I had an interview and I never ever found out if I got the job or not. So, maybe they're still expecting me. Who knows? So there's this kind of AI filter thing. It's hard out there. People aren't employing, hospitality, retail, those sectors that really did employ people, particularly young people and older people. Employers aren't employing. There's a lack of part-time jobs. When a part-time job becomes available, traditionally they would have been filled maybe by young people, Saturday jobs, but now they're competing against 60-year-old people trying to get a Saturday job. I read that Kurt Geiger had a Saturday job in Manchester, one Saturday job. They had 800 applicants. It's that bad out there. University students at university can't get work which they need to, because they're up against 50-year-old women trying to get work. They're all fighting for the same jobs, where historically like a waitressing job would have gone to a student, whereas now there are 55, 60-year-old women going, I'll take waitressing. I might have been the editor of Elle or a managing director of whatever, but I'll do anything. Yeah. I'll work in the Beefeater, which is where I waitressed when I was at uni. I'm just thinking, don't even know if that exists anymore. So there's this really...
No, they've just closed them down. That's another fact.
Hot off the press. But then there's also this ageism thing. And obviously that's where we'll talk primarily around women and men, and I'm going to give some stats in a minute, are finding it harder and harder to get jobs in their 50s and their 60s. And as we've said, the pension age keeps going up. So we're expected to work longer, but how are we going to get jobs in our 50s and 60s? And the difference between the women and the men, there is ageism against both, but a lot of the men have kept their jobs. So they're not looking for new jobs in their 50s and early 60s because they haven't left their roles. Whereas women often have left for caring responsibilities, whether that's parenting or looking after other family members. So therefore often returning to work. And there is a problem because people clearly are perceiving older people as not being as good. I'm going to give some stats before we start chatting. So this is like 50 to 64-year-olds. 69% of women are currently employed in that age gap versus 77% of men's. But obviously that's employed. So that's, you could say, well, the others aren't employed. So there are more men employed than there are women in that age group. There's a lot of stats around inactive. So there's a lot of, particularly since COVID, there's been this thing about people in their 50s are inactive. They're leaving work. They're not coming back. Apparently 30% of women are inactive and 22% of men are inactive. But I would like to question that around, are they inactive or can they just not find work? There is a difference. And these people that quote the stats and the government, it's easier to say they're inactive than there's a problem. They can't get jobs in the first place, because that would mean that you have to say that there's an employment crisis. Women are 5 times more likely to only work in term time, the stats show, which again is saying we're looking for part-time jobs, we're looking for flexible jobs, we're looking for short-term jobs because of the caring responsibilities. 1 in 5 are self-employed. So obviously we do know more women, and men, but more women, particularly in their 50s and 60s, are having to set up themselves as a business. And research shows that the highest rise in unemployment is between 50 and 64, but that includes men as well. So it is a problem. And the pension age is rising, but we can't get a job. So there's so many things to talk about, but have you seen this? First of all, I suppose, have you heard on the grapevine people can't get jobs?
I mean, some of that bit kind of ties back to what we were talking about before as well, isn't it? It seems young people can't get jobs. Nobody can get jobs. It seems
there is a bit of that.
And all of the groups are then picking on the other one, saying that they're not trying hard enough, basically. Yeah. The economically inactive thing is one of the things that interests me, because that was something that was brought up when they were talking about that as as a negative thing again, that they are economically inactive, but that doesn't necessarily mean not looking for work or like you were saying. I mean, I've been self-employed for some time, so I think, but I file my tax returns and everything, so I will count as economically active, I
Yeah.
guess, for that sense. But I think that sometimes gets harder as you get older as well, especially if your job relies on competing with other people for work as well, I guess. You know, like that kind of like, do people want you for campaigns and things as you get older? So is it about the question I had for you that I kept coming up when you were talking about it was they say that AI filtering is largely responsible for excluding these women in their 50s and 60s from some of the jobs. What are they filtering
Well,
for, do you think?
AI are filtering actually everybody. So the AI, I don't think, is about older women, although it may be if people want young people. You know, the big issue with AI is they are filtering. So, for example, one of the things, I'm trying to help my kids with their CVs, and I'm trying to help them get work, and so I'm trying to research how to bypass or how to win the AI filtering war. And there's even things like this is, is if you write in your job description that you want somebody fast as a word, you probably wouldn't say fast, but let's just say fast, you need to make sure that you have written the word fast in your CV. And the AI will go, it's a match. But that implies, so if you want to beat the AI system, you need a different CV or amend your CV for every job application. And I see lots of people saying, well, that's what you have to do now. But that's quite ridiculous because the idea is you write your CV and you show that's your CV. And you might have one that's a little bit more customer folk, like say you want to work in a shop or a restaurant. This is what I'm talking about with my kids. Maybe let's have a CV that's more hospitality and we'll have a CV that's more retail and we'll just know which one is which. But now it's like you have to match the words. I think this is the problem. So if the AI is being set to look for certain years, maybe say you said I did something in 2005, that would, that's going to maybe highlight that you're older than what they want, but you're not allowed to do that. So I don't know if that's being set, but the AI thing I think is across the piece.
Yeah,
but because there's also ageism.
I'm wondering if it's more that thing, where like people have more nuance, don't they?
Yes.
Than an AI filter. So you might write yourself, you might say, we're looking for someone like in their 20s and 30s and, they've got at least 2 years experience, right? But then when a CV pops up for someone in their 40s or 50s and they've got 10 years experience and they look absolutely amazing, you might think, I wonder why they want this job, but I think they're probably worth an interview and at least get them to interview and get in front of people. Whereas if it's being filtered out before it even gets to a nuanced human being, then...
Although I do need to say, particularly with my recruitment hat on from my previous life, is that you are not allowed to say you want a 20 to 30-year-old. You might internally in your brain think that, but you're not supposed to. That wouldn't work. But say you want somebody that lives in the same town. So location could be a thing. The AI will go, this person doesn't live in the town. They might live in the next town, but they're gone. Whereas you would go, well, as long as they can get here, that's fine. So there's that kind of thing. I think before I lose my train of thought, there was one thing you mentioned around, you said you were self-employed. What worries me is when you see the stats and the figures and the things that the government would look at, they just look at people who are employed, people who are self-employed, people who are inactive, which is a stupid new word because it's actually unemployed. Let's not beat around the bush. They're not working. When they go, they will say that all these unemployed people, they need X amount of jobs or whatever. So they'll look at it like that. What they're not looking at is there are so many self-employed people also looking for work. So I last year was looking for a part-time job for a number of reasons, partly because I need money and partly because I just wanted to change, wanted to get out of the house. So there was lots of different reasons. And I discovered there was lots of people like me who are self-employed that just want 2 days a week or 3 days a week or some work. But we don't show up in the stats because we are working. So
because you're employed,
because we're employed, self-employed. So the problem is bigger than what the government can see. And then there's this new layer where would you want to employ somebody who is 50? Question mark. I'd like to say yes, but there is that bit, the age bit. People do worry about employing women because of the caring responsibilities and all that stuff, which is obviously bullshit, but it's what happens. But then if you're self-employed and you're trying to look for work, people go, well, I don't really want her to work for me because she's running her own business and her priorities are going to be over there. And you have to go, no, they're not, because actually I can work for 2 days a week. I have, I can juggle it. I can do it. And actually I need to work 2 days a week because my self-employed business maybe isn't going very well at the moment. But then they go at the moment, so it becomes harder, and there's more women self-employed doing those kind of creative jobs where they might need extra money, but they've got that working against them too.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, you talked about Kurt Geiger having a Saturday job and getting 800 applications. So I feel like the fact that there is a lack of opportunities is going to tie into that as well. When you've got 800 people applying for a Saturday job, you could be as picky as you please. So if you, even in your head and not putting it in the advert, think, oh, women in their 50s and 60s might be an issue. They're like close to retirement or like menopausal or like whatever reasons you think of.
Know nothing about fashion, they probably think.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever reasons you think of, or just won't look pretty enough in the uniform, like whatever reasons you've decided, you might, you've got 800 CVs to sift, you might automatically go over 40, off you go. Like under 25, maybe off you go, irresponsible. And,
exactly.
And then you've narrowed down your CVs to so you're not looking individually at 800 CVs, because who the hell's got time to do that?
You need the AI filter, because you can't look at 800 for one Saturday job.
So the problem's bigger than just like discriminating against women in their 50s and 60s. It's more like there's just no work for anybody.
There is and I think there is that, but I also think there is a lot of discrimination. So my whole career is retail marketing in various, jobs. And I've headed up departments. I've managed, 10 million pound budgets. Like, I am an experienced person, but I am willing, this was me last year, I am willing to go and do some marketing on 2 days a week and just low level, because I'm not going to run the department. I don't want to run the department. I think there's an air then of, why do you only want 2 days? Are you going to try and take over the department? This generalization. Are you going to be more experienced than me? Probably. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with getting a job where I'm employed. My boss is 20 years younger and I potentially know more. I'm okay with that. I will do as I'm told. It's my part-time job, so but I think there must be a feeling of fear of employing somebody like me, because they would feel threatened, or I would be too know-it-all, they'd think, or am I too expensive? Then don't even get me started on the pay, because you'd have to take such a huge pay cut, because part-time jobs, it's not. So therefore I was applying for these jobs and just ghosted. And so then what am I supposed to do? I could go and work on the shop floor in Tesco.
Benefit?
Well, yeah, fuck that. Well, I can't get them because I'm self-employed.
They're an absolute nightmare. That was a pandemic issue for a lot of.
I could go and work on the shop floor, and Lyd also quoting that article. I spent 12 years at Tesco's, but I spent 12 years at Tesco's in middle management positions in the office. They probably would look at my CV and go, why would you want to work on the shop floor? Whereas I think I'd be a benefit. I understand grocery. I understand the company. I understand the customer. I'd be a benefit. But I know they'd think,
why do you want to do this? Yeah, like.
And you've got your own business as well. But actually,
do you think that, as well as that kind of, there's the other side to that as well, isn't there, of course, is that you've got years and years and years of experience, but there's also a lot of thing where women who might be applying for jobs in their 50s and 60s may have gaps in their careers because they've been bringing up children and things. So maybe they have like what's perceived as a lack of work experience. Maybe they've been,
I think there's a lot of that.
Maybe they've been homemakers. Air quotes again, air quotes, everyone.
But I think there's
probably all those years.
I think there's a lot of unconscious bias, ageism, but you know what I mean, unconscious ageism. Because I think I don't think they're going, oh, we hate women in their 50s. I think it's like, oh, But and then will they have to look after their mums? And they only want flexible working, and will they be menopausal? And I think there's a lot of like, why are these gaps? As you said, why are there these gaps? Where actually we are champion jugglers. We've been juggling parenting,
Yeah, we're all right.
caring. Like we have got this. But then, as I said, I went for an interview for like a 2-day-a-week job, and they never. I mean, I presume they only interviewed maybe, let's just 5 people. Well, a handful of people. They didn't even write to say you haven't got the job.
Rude.
Which is just so rude. And that's what it's like out there. And then there's this whole Botox your CV. So and in fact, I'm thinking I need to rewrite my CV. So maybe this is the time for everybody to give me some advice. I've run my own business since 2015. So it's 10 years of being self-employed and then 20 years of retail experience and management experience and all this. If I tell you the years, you'd be able to quickly work out that I'm in my 50s. And people are saying, get rid of all that. But get rid of that. That's the gold dust bit, if you know what I mean. That's my experience. How do I write my CV?
I think some people don't put the years on, they just put, I worked here for this amount of years, and they don't
you'll be able to work it out, won't you?
But they don't put the actual years.
Well, I know you're not supposed to write every single role you've had. I know that.
I'll be back down to my Saturday job at Kent Yarn Craft in Tunbridge Wells.
You're not supposed to do that. I get that. But I would want to write that I opened stores internationally in Europe, But if I add that in and that in and that, all these things in, again, you're going to know I'm not.
It becomes obvious that you've got a long career history.
I know. So it's like, I don't know what the answer is, although it's amazing this Stacey is making a lot of noise because it is a problem. And there is an argument, and I am seeing people, when people talk about young people out of work, there's a lot of, I'm seeing comments saying, what we need to address the pension age, because if you want us to work longer, it is going to be harder for younger people to get work, as well as everybody to get work. So we need to we can't do both. We can't expect people to have full-time jobs at 18.
Especially when there's fewer and fewer jobs, and we're currently looking into getting AI to take over half of the jobs that they already work.
Well, even in supermarkets, the self-checkout. I was the one that launched Scan as You Shop in Tesco's, which is where you do your own scanning. It was my job. I designed the whole thing. I didn't do the tech.
Yeah, no, I love it.
I designed the whole thing, the unit you take your thing out of. That was me and my team. We did it all. But of course, now I'm like, we don't need so many people on the shop floor anymore.
No checkout jobs.
There's no checkout jobs because you don't need because it's self-scan. So yes, we're creating a world where we don't need as many people, but we're saying you have to work till you're 66. What's the answer? Help me, everyone.
Universal basic income.
Well, yeah. And then, as you said, we started off with, I can't get a benefit, even if I wanted to. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the skilled jobs are disappearing and the menial jobs are disappearing. So for everybody, kind of not just women, I do think women in their 50s and 60s do suffer from that invisibility that we've talked about before as well.
Yeah.
Men are expected to be in their 50s and 60s and working. Men in their 50s and 60s at work are mature, responsible, senior, whereas women in their 50s and 60s at work are over the hill and is she here kind of, so I do think women do suffer from that a bit, that they're more likely to get filtered out early on through that unconscious bias than men of that age are. And it's the problem is that those kind of biases, with fewer and fewer jobs getting more and more and more applications, those kind of biases, you can almost understand why people use them to filter, because you've got to have, if you've got 800 perfectly qualified applications, you can't interview them all. So you've got to find some way of filtering it down. And at the end of the day, it's going to be, I've got a bad feeling about this one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but to be honest with you, as somebody that used to read through CVs all the time, you do that. You go, yeah, this looks good. Oh, I'm not sure about that. And there you go in the maybe pile. But that you have.
So they go, oh, Comic Sans.
Oh, I don't like that. Why is their CV like a book? Get rid of it. I'm not even looking at it. So you have to do that, which is, again, still wrong, but you have to, but at least it's a human eye, because you might go, gosh, why have they written War and Peace? But oh my goodness, they work for our competitor and they'll have all this amazing knowledge. I'll maybe forgive them the fact that they've written a book as a CV. So you have that human eye bit. So I just, if anyone's got the answer, I'd love to know, for my kids and for me. Anyway, we need to wrap up.
We do.
Basically, it's
We
doom
do
and
have
gloom.
work to do.
Yeah, it's doom and gloom on the job market front, but we need to keep pushing.
Doom and gloom on the job market front and the benefits front. So basically, this episode is a little bit doom and gloom.
Maybe that's the name, Gemma.
It's Friday, I'm doom and gloom.
I'm just, gloomy. Doomy and gloomy.
Right, well, if anyone's got any cheerful topics for us to talk about next week, feel free to suggest.
Absolutely. And we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us for another roundup of midlife chat, hot takes, and occasional moaning. Well, quite a bit of moaning.
Make sure you hit subscribe so your podcast app gently nudges you every Friday, because honestly, who remembers anything without a reminder these days? And also, we like people liking us because we're very needy.
And if you fancy being extra lovely, leave us a rating or a review. It helps more brilliant women like you find us. Have a great weekend, everyone, and make sure you find time for yourself. You deserve it.